Hometown Ghost Stories contains serious and often distressing events and is not intended for all audiences. Viewer discretion is advised.
Alice and Merle were patiently waiting in line at the ramp to the Queen Mary. Merle was a history buff and was excited to experience the boat firsthand after reading so much about it. He was in the process of explaining the boat's history to his wife Alice when he realized that she seemed not to be listening. "It was used in World War II to transport POWs, he said, as he stared at the side of her uninterested face. "Uh-huh," she responded distantly. "Then a UFO descended from the clouds and spun the ship around 180 degrees. It was 2 weeks before they realized that they had been traveling in the wrong direction," he added. "Uh-huh," she said with the same amount of enthusiasm. "Are you even listening to me?" Merle asked dejectedly. Alice didn't respond. She was looking at a girl in the front of the line who was telling a story that she found significantly more interesting than whatever her husband was going on about. The black-haired girl with a lip ring was talking about a crewman in 1966 named John Petter. On July 10, 1966, the Queen Mary was at sea when the weather turned foul. During bouts of bad weather, it was protocol to seal the watertight doors. John's crewmates recalled after the fact that they were playing a game of chicken, as they usually did. They would run and try to jump through the doorway as they closed. Whoever jumped through the closest to when the door shut would be declared the winner. As John jumped through door 13, it closed shut on him, virtually cutting him in half. The girl with the lip ring explained that John's ghost still haunts the area surrounding door number 13. "Ooh," Merle said, wiggling his fingers in Alice's face. Alice brushed him away, telling him to knock it off. As the line began to move up the ramp, Merle called out to the sky, "Hey John, if you're haunting this ship, feel free to join us on the tour." He looked over at Alice with a big grin on his face, but Alice just rolled her eyes as they boarded the ship. The two declined the guided tour, opting instead to explore the boat at their own pace. As they were heading to the battle bridge, Alice got a weird feeling in the pit of her stomach. "I don't feel so good," she told Merle, who was a pace or two behind her. She didn't want to tell him that she had the feeling that somebody was watching them for fear of him teasing her, but she couldn't deny her intuition. That's when she heard the sound of someone running up the metal walkway behind them. She quickly turned to the side, hugging the rail to her left to let by whoever was in such a hurry. She felt the air move as if someone were hurrying by, but nobody passed her. Alice gasped in shock. She turned to face Merle, who just stood there with a blank look on his face. Alice shrieked. "What?" Merle asked, startled. Alice pointed at him. Merle's face was covered in black fingerprints. He wiped his face and looked at his hand. "Looks like engine grease," he exclaimed, shocked. He looked at Alice, and his face went pale. "Your face too," he said. Alice went to wipe her face, and that's when she noticed the number on the doorway that they were standing in, door number 13. I'm Jesse Wilkins, and this is Hometown Ghost Stories, The Queen Mary. Construction on hull number 534 began in December of 1930 by the John Brown and Company shipyard at Clydebank in Scotland. Work was briefly halted on the ship a year later due to the Great Depression, but would continue after a loan was secured from the British government. 3.5 years later, and $3.5 million later, the ship was completed. Legend has it, the name of the luxurious ocean liner was supposed to be Queen Victoria, but there was some confusion. When Cunard directors went to King George to seek his blessing of the ship's name, they informed him that they planned to name the new ocean liner after England's greatest queen, meaning Queen Victoria, who was King George's grandmother. However, upon hearing this news, King George replied, quote, "My wife will be delighted that you are naming the ship after her." So to avoid an awkward conversation, Queen Mary it was. There was already a Clyde turbine steamer named the TS Queen Mary, so Cunard made an agreement with its owners to have the older ship renamed the Queen Mary II. The RMS Queen Mary was the flagship of the Cunard line. She was launched in 1934 and made her maiden voyage on May 27, 1936. The Queen Mary was one of the most luxurious and fastest ocean liners of her time, and was designed to compete with the rival ocean liner, the SS Normandy. It was the crown jewel of transatlantic ocean liners. It's over 1,000 feet long, measuring in at over 80,000 gross register tons. The ship featured 2 indoor swimming pools, a grand ballroom, children's nurseries, beauty salons, libraries, a music studio and lecture hall, tennis courts, and dog kennels. The largest room was the cabin-class main dining room, which was 3 stories high. It was the first ocean liner to have its own Jewish prayer room, which was a part of the British anti-Semitism policy and a bit of a middle finger to Nazi Germany. She sailed at high speed for most of her maiden voyage, arriving in New York Harbor on June 1, 1936. For the next 3 years, the Queen Mary was the grandest ocean liner in the world, carrying celebrities such as Bob Hope, Clark Gable, the Duke and Duchess of Windsor, and even our old friend Winston Churchill. She set a new speed record which wouldn't be topped for the next 14 years. But when the Queen Mary docked in New York in September 1939, that would be the last time she would carry civilian passengers for several years. With the breakout of World War II, the Queen Mary would begin transformation into a troop transport vessel. She was painted gray and stripped of her luxurious amenities, being replaced with bunks and mess halls to accommodate the soldiers. The Queen Mary was dubbed the Grey Ghost due to her stealth, speed, and color. She was able to travel faster than enemy U-boats, so she was a relatively safe transport for troops. The ship was also used to transport prisoners of war, who were stored in the cargo hold. Many POWs did not survive the extreme heat in this area, which would reach temperatures upwards of 110 degrees due to its vicinity to the boiler rooms, as well as a lack of ventilation and any sort of air conditioning. In total, the ship transported over 800,000 troops during World War II. On the morning of October 2nd, 1942, the Queen Mary was carrying around 10,000 American troops of the 29th Infantry Division, just north of Ireland. The liner was steaming its usual zigzag pattern at a speed of 28.5 knots, which is about 33 miles per hour. The reason for the zigzag pattern was to evade enemy submarine and aerial attacks. On this voyage, the Queen Mary was being escorted by another ship, the Carasoa. This ship was not as fast as the Queen Mary, with a top speed of 25 knots, so their route was more of a straightaway shot to keep pace. Each captain had their own interpretations of the rule of the road, believing that his ship had the right of way. Captain John Wilfred Boutwood of the Curaçao kept the liner's mean course to maximize his ability to defend both of them from enemy aircraft, while Commodore Sir Cyril Gordon Illingworth of the Queen Mary continued with their zigzag pattern, expecting the escort cruiser to stay out of their way. They did not. At 13:32, the distance between the two ships was closing in. They nearly collided, and Illingworth told his officer to continue on zigzagging. Quote, "These chaps are used to escorting. They will keep out of our way and won't interfere with you." At 14:04, with about 400 yards between the two boats, the Queen Mary started a starboard turn from a position slightly behind the Curaçao. Boutwood attempted to get out of their way, but it was too late. The Queen Mary struck Curaçao at full speed, cutting the cruiser in half. Half of the ship sank immediately, while the rest of the ship stayed on the surface for a few minutes. The Queen Mary was under direct orders not to stop for any reason, even as hundreds of men were drowning and being pulled into her propellers. The Queen Mary did not stop, but radioed other destroyers of her escort, who were about 7 nautical miles away. Hours later, 2 ships arrived and rescued around 100 survivors, including Boutwood. According to the Navy casualty file released by the United Kingdom National Archives, in total, 337 officers and men of the crew died in the accident. Witnesses were sworn to secrecy due to national security concerns, and the loss was not publicly reported until after the war ended. The case went to court in 1945, and the Queen Mary's crew and her owners were exonerated from blame on January 21, 1947. All of the fault fell on the Curaçao's officers. After the war, the ship returned to the Queen Mary status. once again transporting passengers across the Atlantic. But as air travel increased in popularity, business on the ocean liner decreased, and the ship was sold to the highest bidder, landing in Long Beach, California in 1965, where she would dock permanently. While in service as a cruise ship, roughly 50 passengers and crew died on board the Queen Mary from various causes, ranging from heart failure to illness, accidental deaths, and suicide. In 1936, Sir Edgar Britton, the first captain of the Queen Mary, died in his cabin due to a stroke. In 1939, William Stark poisoned himself to death accidentally. We'll get more into that story in a bit. It's unclear how many POWs died in the cargo hold, as these numbers aren't recorded in the captain's log. But with hundreds of thousands of troops and POWs traveling on board the Queen Mary during World War II, the number of deaths on board during this time is estimated in the hundreds. It has now gained a reputation as a paranormal hotspot. One well-known story is of a young girl named Jackie, who is said to have drowned in the ship's second-class pool. Some visitors claim to have seen her ghostly figure wandering the decks or playing in the pool, and others report hearing the sound of child's laughter or footsteps running around the area. Jack and Kelly Osborne investigated the pool area, and during the spirit box session, when Jack asked if anyone was with them, a clear voice came through and said, "I am," followed by the same voice telling them to get out. The ghost of a woman in a red dress has also been spotted by the pool by multiple visitors as well as employees. She was seen walking by the pool before vanishing. It was impossible for this to be an actual person, since there is only one staircase that leads out of that pool area, and she never went up those stairs. She simply disappeared. The pool had been drained for over 26 years, but on several occasions, visitors have seen wet footprints appear on the floor. Now, just to be clear, there's no record of anyone drowning in the Queen Mary's pools, so it's hard to say why the ghost of Jackie haunts this area, or why she appears by the pool so frequently. In June of 2016, a security officer was doing her rounds when she noticed that a room that was supposed to be shut and locked had the door wide open. When she went to lock the door, she noticed a little girl standing inside. As she approached her to see if she was lost, the little girl raised her arms as if she wanted to be picked up. As the security officer approached her, the girl vanished. This isn't the only time that this little girl has been spotted. It's believed that this might be the ghost of Jackie, who is most frequently seen in the pool area, dancing, giggling, singing, and sometimes she is heard crying. On Deck 4, the ghost of a former captain appears in the ladies' room, of all places. While this sounds like an odd place for a male ghost to appear, when the ship was refurbished and turned into a hotel, they actually switched the men's room to the ladies' room and the ladies' room to the men's room. It's believed that this could be the ghost of Senior Second Officer William Eric Stark, who passed away on the Queen Mary in 1949 after drinking dry cleaning fluid accidentally. Apparently, this tetrachloride was stored in an old gin bottle, and he gulped it down, not realizing what it was. In all fairness, I also have a hard time distinguishing the smell of gin from toxic chemicals, so I can see how this could be true. Anyways, he died 3 days later. In January of 2017, a former crew member stepped into the elevator and saw a reflection in the door. She saw the image of a woman in a long white gown standing directly behind her. When she turned around, there was nobody there. This was the second crew member to see this ghostly woman in the elevator. Staff at the Queen Mary referred to her as, you guessed it, the woman in white. In August of 2012, a staff member saw a man dressed in black climbing a staircase. This incident didn't seem anything out of the ordinary until the man reached the top of the staircase and vanished. He frantically went to his supervisor and reported on what he had just witnessed. His supervisor told him that what he saw was one of the more commonly spotted ghosts on board, the man in black. The staircase that he appears on is one of the more steep staircases on the ship and has claimed the lives of at least 2 passengers. The staircase is located by the bow of the ship, and on days where the waters were particularly rough, that area would move up and down, causing some unfortunate souls to lose their footing, which was sometimes fatal. It's believed that the man in black was one of those passengers who lost their lives on that staircase, and his ghost has been seen more than 24 times. The bow of the ship is believed to be one of the more haunted areas. It's said that in the boiler room, you can still hear the disembodied screams of the soldiers from the Carasoa who died on impact around this spot on the ship. Room B340 has had hundreds of reports of varying paranormal activity. The room has a checkered past. According to staff, while the ship was making a transatlantic voyage, at least one man was found dead in the room. There was so much strange and unexplained poltergeist activity following his death that they apparently sealed off the room in the 1980s. Recently, room B340 has turned into a hotel suite and is back open to the public. Hundreds of hauntings have been recorded in a log kept by the ship, where visitors write down the paranormal activity that they experienced in this room. One guest claimed to have the bed sheets pulled off of her in the middle of the night. She sat up and saw a man standing at the foot of her bed before disappearing into the shadows. When she turned on the lights, nobody was in the room with her. The bathroom door has closed by itself. There have been bumps, footsteps, and disembodied voices that are heard all throughout the night, but most activity peaks at 3 a.m. The water in the bathroom turns on and off. Lights turn on and off, but when maintenance is called, they can't seem to find anything wrong with the wiring or plumbing. They just chalk it up to yet another haunting in room B340. Sam and Kobe stayed in this room for an overnight paranormal investigation, and with little to no luck during the night, they all agreed to pack it up and leave. Just as they were getting ready to go, they all witnessed the faucet turning on by itself in the bathroom. Aaron, a member of their crew, grabbed a voice recorder and started recording. They immediately started hearing pounding on the walls, followed by a series of knocks that seemed to come in threes in response to their questions. These knocks would be heard from different parts of the room every time. The walls, the ceiling, the windows, the bathroom, and the floor would shake as if a heavy metal door was slamming beneath them. At the end of their session, they asked whatever was in the room with them, quote, "Is heaven real?" And 3 knocks followed. They ended the EVP session at that point and left, feeling that they might have been dealing with something demonic. Demonic entities will try to convince you that there is no heaven. They also captured an EVP of what sounded like someone humming inside the room. A housekeeper at the Queen Mary claimed that one morning she came into the room to put fresh sheets on the bed. She was alone at the time. She turned around and went back into the hall to get fresh towels. When she returned, all of the sheets had been pulled from the bed and laid in a pile on the floor. Another man claims that he woke up and saw the figure of a man sitting in the chair in the corner of the room. He felt that whatever this entity was wanted to watch him sleep. So why is room B340 in particular the height of so much paranormal activity on board the ship? Some say it's the ghost of the man who supposedly died there. Others believe that hundreds of ghosts pass through this room because it's so close to the first-class swimming pool, where psychics claim that there is a vortex or portal located, which allows spirits to pass from one dimension to the next. 75 feet in the opposite direction is the cargo hold, where scores of German prisoners died from heat exhaustion. There was no air conditioning in this area at the time, and the ship was designed to carry around 3,000 passengers. Upwards of 10,000 men would be on board the Queen Mary in its days as a troop transport vessel during World War II. So it's unclear why B340 is so haunted or what that source is, but there have been hundreds of reports of paranormal activity within this room. I'm Jesse Wilkins, and this is Hometown Ghost Stories, the RMS Queen Mary. What's going on, folks? Welcome into Hometown Ghost Stories, episode number 77. I'm Jesse Wilkins, and today we're talking about the haunted Queen Mary, aka the Grey Ghost. What's going on, Rob?
Well, I'm excited because, Dave, do I have something for you? I have a bottle of gin for you to try if you're so inclined.
I think I'll pass.
We are also joined by Dave. Hello, Dave.
What's going on? Not a big gin guy.
No, I never have, and I wasn't joking. Andrew, Captain McSlugs, usually has gin inside of a globe that opens up because, of course, he does. And I don't know. Every time I smell it, I'm like, this just smells like chemicals that aren't supposed to enter your body. So I can see how that mistake could happen, but we'll get into that in a little bit. So we're talking
Smells
about
like Pine Sol.
Yeah, not my favorite. Not my favorite. I'll stick to my whiskey and definitely not Miller Lights. Today we're joined by a special guest. He's from the Paranormal Portal, and his name is Brent Thomas, and he joins us on the show. Welcome in, Brent.
Hey guys, thanks for having me, man. I'm honored to be here with you.
Oh, thank you for
Thanks
joining
so
us.
much. It actually works out perfectly. This wasn't planned, but the Queen Mary is known to have a bunch of portals. So having you from Paranormal Portal on just kind of worked out perfectly.
Yeah, that is true. I think portals are a pretty interesting topic, but it's one that's hard to get your head around. I just saw in chat somebody's like, when the ship moves, does the portal move? And it's like, well, that's a great question. So yeah, I'm thrilled to be here. Not that I'm a portal expert by any measure. I just like the name, but hopefully I can have some good input tonight.
Damn, I had so many questions about portals. Confusing.
You have to
subject.
forgive me, guys. I feel like I'm talking with a grapefruit in my cheek. I went to the dentist today, so I even got a water with a straw in it so I don't dribble like a toddler here. So
We
We
prefer
need
that,
to get
actually.
Dave that when we go out.
If you could remove that straw, actually, if we could just watch you drool all over yourself, that'd be actually pretty good. Pretty
Dave,
good for the stream.
if I gave you this gin with a straw, would you drink it?
I've never been a gin drinker anyway. It just the whole pine tree thing is, I don't know. I'm more of a bourbon guy or a spiced rum, I guess, or just a beer. So
Same.
yeah.
Sounds like
Same
we're
here.
right up the same alley there. I want to say what's up to everybody who's hanging out in live chat. We appreciate you guys for swinging by. We got a couple of donations during the countdown. One from a rare IPA that you've never heard of, and I believe it was Matthew T, who also dropped $2. So thank you guys so much for those donations. We appreciate you. And welcome into everyone who's hanging out. I see Irish Assassin, Rachel B. The other Rachel B is here. That's an absolute delight. Which one was first on Patreon? Because
Rachel B.
yeah, but they're both Rachel B.
Yeah.
Hard to be
We're
wrong.
not wrong.
I don't at all. We're correct.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rachel B, for being around for so long. We appreciate it. And Papa Squatch, everybody else is hanging out. I see Anna, Andrew, everybody. So thank you guys for joining. If you want to join in on the live chat, which is on fire already today, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time is when we go live every week on YouTube, and then obviously at your podcast after the fact. But thank you guys so much. So today we're talking
On
about the Queen Mary.
Tuesdays. I feel as though saying Tuesday is a very important distinction when you're saying when we go live. Also, before we start, I want to do a golf clap since I don't want to like ruin people's eardrums. Good job, Jesse. I thought 20 minutes of this episode was going to be you just telling us how a steam engine works in a ship, and I was ready for it, but I'm very excited that we didn't have to sit through that.
Well, here's the thing. And first of all, thank you, Demon King, for dropping $6.66 in super chat. Little 666 from Demon King. Very appropriate. I figured that I could put together an episode, and I mean, as a nuclear physicist, I don't want work to feel like work, I want to take a day off every once in a while. So
Yeah,
I decided to take some time off there.
thanks.
Now
for
that video was beautiful. Nice job, man. I was really impressed.
Appreciate it. Yeah, thank you so much. So it was a good one. It was a little last minute. This one was tricky. It is tricky because there are a lot of these ghost stories that are completely made up. And I could say that confidently because I believe for a short period of time, Disney owned this ship. I think they had plans to refurbish and do this. And I'm pretty sure, if my source is correct, that Disney just straight up made up a few of these ghost stories. So it's really hard to figure out which ones are accurate and which ones are tied to actual hauntings. Now, there's a captain's log on the ship that actually records all of the deaths that happened when it was acting as basically a cruise ship. And so with those, you get the one where the guy drank the gin or thought he was drinking the gin. You get a few of the other ones that we talked about, but you don't get anything of anybody drowning in any of the pools, which, by the way, if you drown in a pool on a cruise ship, isn't that a weird way to die? Like, you're on a vessel that is floating and you still managed to drown.
Sucks to drown in the boat.
I mean, it sucks to drown anyways. And Matthew Thomas coming through with $9.99 in super chat. He says, "Suck it, Demon King. Rob will wind Jesse up for Act 2, and we will go on for another 20 minutes. All right. Sounds good. So I not a lot of shows or podcasts really talk about the whole Disney aspect of it and the made up ghost stories aspect of it. So it's tricky to figure out which ones were actually from Disney and if they did come up with them. But there was a pretty reliable source that had said basically this one is completely made up by Disney. So it's interesting. You can look into it if you choose to do so. But most of the ones that we talked about on the show, and a few of them that we actually didn't have time to mention in the podcast, in the pre-recorded part there, we're gonna talk about after the fact, because there's some good ones and some crazy ones. But
Well,
it all starts.
It's interesting to make up all these ghost stories, and when you have so many events that actually happened on the ship, like we've had this on a couple other locations where there's so much like actual history here. Why are we adding to it when you can just focus? And that's kind of almost a problem with this one, is there's so much that it becomes almost scatterbrained, right? Where you're like, and all of their ghosts are color coded. They have the woman in white, they have the lady in the red bathing suit, they have the man in black. It's like, okay, we're playing a game of freaking Clue here on the ship or something. What is going on? Why is everything color coded? Why don't we just stick with what is actually transpired on this particular ship?
That's true. I mean, just the accident in World War II is a tragic enough story to do it. Now, I don't really know. I mean, they say that you can still hear the screams of the soldiers down near like the propeller, which I'm pretty sure it hit the front of the boat. But
I thought they said the bow in the video. I thought you said the bow, didn't you?
Yeah.
And then, yeah, I thought so. Sorry.
You did.
Now, I'm a nuclear physicist. I'm not a sailor. Is the bow the front or the back of the ship?
The front.
The front.
Okay, yeah. So it did collide like head on, basically to the Curacao. I spent a long time trying to figure out how to actually pronounce this word, and I keep forgetting every time I try to say it. But it split the ship in two. So they were doing their zigzag pattern and basically just collided with this thing and T-boned it, if you will, and that was what split it. But after the ship passed, what had happened was the current apparently sucked a lot of these soldiers that were in the water directly into the propellers behind the ship.
Okay.
So as if your day wasn't rough enough when you got your ship split in two, that's how a lot of them went. A lot of them died from hypothermia, just sitting there in the water, and then a lot of them drowned. So those were the main ways that they went. But they do say that the propeller area is haunted, and I believe that the front of the ship is also haunted if you go down like below deck towards the boiler rooms and stuff. So apparently you could still hear the screams of passengers or the victims of this accident in those areas, which is pretty wild.
It is wild. Yeah. I find it interesting too. You were mentioning a lot of the stories are made up, or several of the stories are made up, and this is kind of a side bar, if you will. But I think that there's something to when people believe something is real, and I don't know if it's a projection of themselves that creates an event or something, but it's like believing in an event does seem to create anomalies at some point, whether or not they have an identity of their own, or if it's some form of like tulpa or something like that, and that's a weird thing too. But anyway, sorry.
No, you're right. It happens actually in more cases that you might think of, where kind of if enough people believe something's true, then it just kind of becomes a thing. And I don't know how much this can actually conjure up like ghosts or anything like that, but with a ship that's this noisy, and a lot of the investigations that I was watching on YouTube and on these paranormal shows, it's so hard, especially when you're in like a boiler room or the engine room or whatever, to differentiate noises that would just be happening in a noisy room anyways. Like this is a room where engines are running. You're going to hear clanking, you're going to hear banging, you're going to hear pops and everything. So it's how do you know that? Of course you heard knocks.
Maybe if you're working in an engine room every single day and you know what that engine sounds like, you would be able to distinguish a sound that is out of place, I would imagine.
Right. So for the employees, and I always take the employees' words for these things a lot more seriously than I would take just a random visitor. If some random visitor walks into a boiler room and hears a clank, Oh my God, I heard a bang. Like, yeah, of course you did. It's a noisy room. We do have to address this because Demon King and Matthew Thomas are going nuts right now, back and forth with the donations. The
Whoa.
battle is raging over here. Demon King with 1313. Matthew Thomas comes back with 1314, and then Demon King fires back with 1315. You guys, it's a long show. You guys can put that on the back burner for now. Thank you so much for the donations. We do always appreciate the most expensive battle of all time. So thank you so much. But what I do find interesting now, I don't discount all of these bangs and knocks inside of these rooms as not being paranormal, because in a few instances, you do get ones that kind of get it on command or in response to their questions. So they'll say knock once for yes, knock several times for no. And you're getting what seems like intelligent responses. And then when they're not asking anything, you're not getting anything in terms of noises. And we dealt with this at the Houghton Mansion with Dave inside the Masonic Temple, where Dave was asking questions and he would get knocks, and then he would stop talking and he would get nothing. So it is possible. Matthew Thomas firing back with $13.16 in super chat. Thank you, Matthew Thomas. It is a battle of the ages over here, and it is distracting, but I love you guys and thank you so much. So that's kind of the boiler room, and that's what they get down there. They've also caught some chilling EVPs. And Brent, you were mentioning this earlier, is some of the EVPs that you've heard out of these. And there are some good ones, and they're ones that are available on the website. Obviously, the Queen Mary embraces its haunted history and the notoriety that it gets out of being a very haunted place.
Which is better than the alternative.
I agree. I understand some like classier hotels, expensive hotels that don't really want to do that. But I mean, this is a tourist attraction, and I fully understand why they would do it.
Yeah, for sure. And it's just, it's good that they do. But again, some of the stories that we're going to get into, you just don't need when you have everything else.
You're right.
The thing with EVPs, I think that is tough too, is you have to wonder how many of those are actually intelligent and being cued by something going on, or how many are just like residual, just replay sounds that have, for whatever reason stored and replayed at that moment. And that's something I was thinking a lot about as I was looking into this. It's like, I wonder how much of this is actually like the ghost in the stateroom, that kind of stuff, interacting with people. That seems very intelligent, but I'm not sure that it all is actively spirits, and maybe a good portion of it could just be these psychic imprints or whatever, however you want to quantify what that means.
Yeah, it does seem like this ship particularly has a mixture of those residual and intelligent hauntings. So trying to distinguish what's what is probably almost impossible to a degree. You also have like one of the things I saw is it's reported that there's over 150 spirits, and it's like, well, how do you know that? Where is that number coming from?
Right.
But when you have that mass tragedy, that number could be greater. It could be less, but it could be greater. It's when you're quantifying the number, though, I have a little bit of an issue with that, especially when it's that high. But yeah,
I can see where it's like, if there's somebody that could detect these things, or somebody that is a sensitive or a psychic or something like that, where they can pinpoint like, oh, I've felt the presence of a certain number of ghosts here today, and then I felt a certain number tomorrow or something like that. I can understand being like, wow, there's at least 20 ghosts here, right? Because they got different kind of evidence from different ones, different voices, different behaviors. But how do you land on an exact number like 150? And I've heard it's more. I've heard it's over 200. I've heard it's over 600. So it's an insane amount of paranormal activity. It's just an insane number of ghosts. But how do you get there, right?
Yeah, it's something that.
And how do you put a cap on it?
Yeah, you're not
152.
Counting.
There's not 153. There's 152. We've closed the portal. There's no more coming in.
We're at max occupancy. No other ghosts are allowed. Any
Can't
other
you read the
tragedies?
sign? Yeah.
I'm sorry, you're not allowed to be a ghost at this ship. It's like the haunted. And speaking of Disney, it's like the Haunted Mansion. They have room for 1,000 guests, then they have 999. They're waiting on one more. Is it you?
So when you mentioned the Haunted Mansion, I was actually going to bring this up earlier, because if Disney actually did buy this cruise ship and own it for a little bit, which it looks like they did for at least a short period of time, then I think they realized it was a bad investment because it needed so much work. If they did, I wonder if they created these ghost stories to make this like the next Haunted Mansion, right?
Mm.
Where they're like, I don't care what the ghost stories are. We're going to make our own. It's going to be a walkthrough thing and it's going to be fun. So maybe that was the direction that they were going to go with it.
Yeah, it could definitely have been something that they were planning on bringing to Disneyland or something like that and making some sort of attraction. But I don't know. Maybe they were planning to make a movie. Maybe it was something to do with some sort of movie that they had going on, a haunted ship. We've seen plenty of those. We watched one with our Patreon members a couple weeks ago.
We did. What a
It's a good time.
quick spiral that movie went on, but it was fun. Mar coming in with a $2 donation saying that she wants to join in. You're always welcome to, and thank you so much. You also don't have to do that, but thank you. So just before we get away from the whole boiler room and the hauntings that are down there, I do want to mention one that we alluded to in the opening story that is actually verified by the captain's log that this actually happened, which was there was a fire. He was listed as a fireman, and he was crushed to death by door 13 down there. I just got a crazy echo.
Yeah,
That's weird.
I don't know where that's coming from.
Yeah, I looked into this one myself also, and I saw that incident actually did happen, and that haunting was also a haunting that actually happened. Was the couple that went in and they had the greasy fingerprints on their face when they were in door 13 area, which I thought was pretty interesting. So there was speculation on whether or not this guy was playing the game of chicken, where they were running through and jumping through the doorway at the last second, or he was actually just trying to get through. They said he was running around looking for his wrench, and he was trying to jump through last minute to do something with his tool. So those are the two conflicting stories. But either way, brutal way to go. And he's allegedly haunts that
I will give out the advice that not worth it for your wrench. Not worth the risk that he took right there. That is brutal.
No, and that's
definitely worth it for bragging rights in the game of chicken, though.
Well, he lost, Dave. There are no bragging rights.
No, Rob, he won. No one's getting closer than that.
That's not close.
He is the champion.
That's a loss. That's a loss. Winning is getting close and then not falling off the cliff. Losing is
being the one that's too scared to even get close. This man got right into the action. Laid it all on the line. Anyways, it's a really, really brutal way to go. Imagine that cleanup effort. That would be a toughie. But I think that they've actually removed that door. And I mean, I would assume that they don't still go through these drills where they do the watertight doors closing. So,
sure.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know if they do.
Andrew P coming through with a $13.18 donation. He says the battle continues. We were all trying to save up for Dave's lobster suit.
How do you know I don't already have a lobster
Should
suit?
we put a cap or like a donation goal on what it will take to put Dave in a lobster suit and have him do the lobster dance in a lobster suit?
I mean, we'd only have to buy a toddler size, so it shouldn't cost too much.
Yeah, Halloween's coming up. Yeah.
Right around the corner.
All right, let's continue to talk about this because they changed the guy's name. His name was, what was his name, Jesse?
Something with a P. His first name was J. Dot.
Yeah,
I can't remember his last name right
but
now.
they call the ghost like Hatch Door Harry or something like that now. And it's like, just call him by his name, man. Like, why are we changing this dude's name posthumously? I know like it flows better if you add an H to it.
It's probably why he's haunting. He's like, that's not my name.
It's not my name.
Just please get it right.
It's not that he wants the wrench again, because that's the other thing is people say that he's looking for his wrench.
Yeah. Apparently his ghost can be seen wearing white overalls.
So white overalls?
Mm-hmm.
Is that a thing? Have white overalls ever been made?
Yes. It might have been the uniform, like the mechanics or the firefighter's uniform on the boat.
Fair. That's fair. Yeah, so this is a tragic story. This haunting feels very much in line with something that could have happened on this ship because it's a tragedy. We talk about how these tragic events either result in, as we were talking about earlier, residual hauntings, most likely probably a residual haunting, just reliving this tragic event over and over and over again.
Yeah.
But maybe there is an intelligent haunting as well.
To me, that one definitely sounds like a residual haunting where he's going through the motions. If they
Mhm.
see him just walking around back and forth in that area where he died, that definitely to me sounds
Maybe
like
that's someone who's causing some of the clanking. Maybe he's banging around looking for his wrench.
could be.
Well, that's the theory, right? Is like you go down there. I've seen them not specifically for this ghost, but rather throughout the ship. A thing they do a lot is the knocks to see if you can get the knockbacks, like we were talking about earlier. So maybe he's knocking back with the wrench.
Brodad verifies that white overalls do in fact exist. He said, my dad had white overalls. He wore them at the dairy that he worked at. Now we know. Thank you. Allison V asks, how tall is Dave? And the answer is not.
Yes.
If you pay attention to the intro video, you can see all the videos of me and Jesse standing next to each other, and you can see exactly how tall.
Dave
we
always
are.
takes 2 steps forward just for the optical
Yeah.
illusion of being
Yeah,
taller than a toddler.
It's called forced perspective.
Yes, Taco with the important question of the day of, do lobsters haunt places? They do not, because they don't die.
Just my belly.
They haunt your belly. Very good.
So let's bring up the portals. It's actually, like I said, a great crossover with Brent because he is from Paranormal Portal, a show that you should check out that we'll talk about in a little bit. But when I was researching this place, they think that there are portals all over this ship. And fantastic point earlier, like if the ship was moving, are the portals moving with it? We don't make the rules here, we always say. But one of the places I saw that they were talking about with the portal is the swimming pool area. But they think throughout the entire ship is full of portals.
Now portals are a tough claim because you hear that thrown a lot around in the paranormal. It's like, well, there's a portal. There's a
Mhm.
portal, and honestly, I would think if there was some kind of trans-dimensional portal going on, it should be measurable. And I know people use dowsing rods and they use pendulums, but you would think that scientifically, and I'm not saying there aren't portals, but it's just one of those things that it's kind of like demons. Everything's a demon, and there's a portal everywhere, and you got to wonder how do you quantify that? That's the tough part. Like, if there was truly a portal from this dimension into another close by dimension or whatever, there should be some kind of particle bursts happening through there, like whether it's gamma rays or something else should be happening. I mean, I'm not a physicist, but it just seems to me
On this show, you are.
Relative, yeah.
We'll
Relative
just,
to the people around you.
we just give out titles: meteorologist, nuclear physicist, whatever you're covering this week. That is interesting. You already know more than we do about portals. Where do they come from? How does a portal form?
Yeah, that's the great question. Some people believe they're ritualistically formed. I believe that we're probably living in a realm of these natural, maybe they're more like respiration points or crossover points than an actual, gateway, but it acts as a gateway. If you think about like the multiverse, or if there is vibrational frequency variations between dimensional realities or something to that regard, then maybe there's a crossover points that happen, and that they work more as a vertex than a portal. But can they be ritualistically created? Some people believe misusing Ouija boards can create portals, and they just seem to be these rifts that come into being through whatever measures, whether naturally, whether ritualistically, whether by tragic event. And certainly ramming a boat and killing 150 people, I would think, if anything could create a portal, that's probably going to be a good bet. But
Well, if there wasn't one when that accident happened, Ouija boards is not something that they banned from the ship. In fact, if you check into the haunted room that we were focusing on for most of this episode, they provide you with a Ouija board, tarot cards, and like a crystal ball. So there's one always there. So if there wasn't one before, there certainly could be one now. Why it's in the swimming pool area and not in this room in particular, I don't know why. But it seems to be like it is centralized. The activity seems to be centralized on this room in particular, to a point where they had straight up sealed it off, removed the number from the door frame and acted like it wasn't even a room for over 30 years.
Wow.
And then they've recently had knocked down a wall and turned 2 rooms into one big kind of hotel suite and just embraced the paranormal. So
Well, the other interesting thing, though, is that oftentimes in the paranormal, water is referred to as a spiritual conduit. So,
Yeah.
by virtue of that being a swimming pool, could that have created this gateway for so many decades, or however long? I know it went out of service and was drained for what, 20 years, they said, or something like that.
yeah, 26 years.
Yeah. So, could there still be some residual to that? I don't know.
And there's also 2 swimming pools. It seems that a lot of these stories seem to be getting mixed with one another. There was like the first class one and the second class one, but they say that this ghost of Rachel seems to be at both of them. But in terms of the portal, I don't really know. And you also brought up the fact that it could move, right? So if the boat's moving, could it be moving, or at least somebody over there? Amber coming in with a $20 donation says, "I win." For now, you do, and thank you so much for that donation. We appreciate that. And then you also mentioned that water could be a conduit of energy. Not only is it swimming pools, but you're also on the damn ocean. So this could be a hot spot for paranormal activity for sure.
Yeah.
Also, so the whole portal thing, we talk about these ghosts that we have no like record of them actually drowning and stuff like that. What could the portals be pulling in, would be my question. Like, is it possible for other spirits to come through that portal? And is that why we see this little girl? And sometimes people, I think, just make up stories around what they see.
Sure.
Right.
Right.
So if you're seeing this little girl around the swimming pool or hearing her or whatever, then potentially you're making up the story that this little girl must have drowned at this swimming pool. Right. So that's kind of, so I wonder if portals do exist, if
Mhm.
they're capable, and I'm not saying anything demonic or anything, but
Sure.
are other spirits capable of traveling through these portals to these locations?
Well, yeah, it's widely believed that once a portal is there, if if it continues, that it would just be a doorway, and coming and going, and any variety of entities, and not all of them human, like some other things like elementals or something else like shadow people, etc. The interesting thing to me is that I'll just go on the record and say it. I've said it on the portal many times, but I'm not a big fan of kid spirits, and it just seems okay. Yeah, and I'm not trying to get at all religious here, but I just believe there's a divine will, and there's a divine spirit that guides all of us, whatever you want to call it, however you want to identify it. But it's hard for me to believe that if this divine will is good, then it would just leave these pure, gentle souls to wander. Like something should be there to bring them home. But it does occur to me that dark things can, appear as whatever they want. And oftentimes I think spirits may choose to look like children because if it disarms people and it breaks down barriers. It's like, because if you're a normal functioning adult or human being, even not an adult, you are going to see a child and want to help. I mean, it's just almost genetically programmed into us.
Yeah.
And I think that dark things prey on people. And so with any predator, they try to be efficient in their predation. Well, if you're already opening up to something, saying, "Oh, I want to help you. I want to help you. I want to take care of you. You can be here. We want to love you and make you part of our family." It's like, bingo, and then the exorcisms start, or the scratches happen, and the furniture is flipping, and any number of things. Not always, but it does come up. So I mean, I'm not saying there can't be children spirits, but I don't know. It's a tough one for me, because I've certainly heard a lot of the stories, even from people I've talked to, saying, "Yeah, we thought it was a kid, and then it wasn't," and that's when it turns sour.
No, you're right.
We've had multiple stories that is the exact case of what has happened.
Yeah.
And I do agree with that. The other thing I think could be a possibility is we talk about hauntings that occur with these tragic events, but I also think that hauntings could be a result of happy events, like of extreme joy.
Mhm.
So even if you pass away, say in your 80s or 90s, if there's a moment in time when you were 7 years old that there was like just an extreme moment of pure happiness,
Yeah.
Like
maybe
drowning in a
you
pool.
like drowning in a pool. Um, no, but if your vacation, if that is just a memory that you hold, perhaps you come back haunting in
Mhm.
that form. Who says what form we have to come back and haunt in, right? So just because you see a kid spirit, I'm convinced that you could possibly come back and haunt in different iterations of your life, especially if we're talking about stuff being a residual haunting. Because
Mhm.
because we talk about, well, we saw this person, they're doing the dishes and this and this. Well, that's not when they died. So that's previous to that. So how old were they when they were doing that? So
Right.
yes, I
Right.
do think it could be a sign of the demonic, but I also do think it could be a sign of just
Sure.
going through your lifespan.
I think it
What
could be a little bit of
form?
both.
What
Yeah.
form could a child come back and haunt other than a child? If you die as a child, you're not going to come back and haunt as an adult. You never were an adult, right?
Right. Well, I think Rob's point was more of like, even if you die as an adult, if your best memory is that of a child, then maybe you go back and replay those moments. You do bring up an interesting point, Brent, which was that, something so pure and innocent, if you're religious at all, which in reality, if you're believing in demons, you're believing in ghosts, there's some religion tied to all of that. I know Chad is pretty split on this, and a
Mhm.
lot of our listeners are pretty split on this as to, are there actually child ghosts, or are they all just demons pretending to be kids?
Yeah.
So, and it
Right.
is interesting that you bring it up, because I never really thought of that, where it's like, if a kid dies, if there is a heaven, why are they leaving this poor little
Right.
child to wander around a pool? Take him up, take care of that kid.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, maybe his soul is there, but his energy's left behind. I don't really know how these things work, but like we always say, we don't make the rules.
And the other consideration is, what if the portal is almost a temporal anomaly, in a sense that and maybe the whole ship is a part of this, that, and it could be a haunted house, it could be anything, anywhere that has a lot of paranormal activity. There's so many times you hear these stories of people seeing people like in pilgrim clothes or old fashioned clothing, and they're doing their thing, and they look up and they look terrified because they see the person. So you have to wonder, is there like a time issue going on where they're seeing us as the ghost and we're seeing them as the ghost? And is it could it be some of that as well?
It's like a The Others situation. Remember that
Yes.
movie?
Yes.
Spoiler alert.
God, you just find a way to spoil a movie every
The movie's
week.
as old
It
as me.
doesn't matter. You find a way to spoil something for people every week. You just shoehorn in a movie
All right,
spoiling.
so if I were Arthur Morgan, if I got tuberculosis, at what age would I be haunting the land of Red Dead Redemption? A real inside joke. If you never played the game, I'm sorry. Anyways, moving on.
Oh my God, it's unbelievable. Yeah, your new nickname is the spoiler. That is just what we have to call you.
I think we were on a tangent there, but Matthew Thomas came in and dropped $20 and 1 cent in Super Chat. So thank you so much, Matthew.
Very cool.
Yes, thank you. So yeah,
With
do we
regard
want
to the portals, right?
Yeah.
Do you think that the portal theory is mutually exclusive to other ghost theories, whether it be religious theory or like the stone tape theory is one that we talk about a lot? But do you think one of them sort of negates the others? Like if one's true, the other ones can't be?
If you're asking me, no, I don't think that one supersedes or overwrites another. I think this phenomena is so diverse, and our understanding of the world around us is very funneled and focused into a small part of it. But I think some of this stuff just seems to be breadcrumbs to show us, look, there's more going on here. There's so much more going on here, and it makes reality fluid. I think that we continually have this idea of reality as this rigid structure, and we have to operate within this rigid structure. But then this stuff happens that's way off the map, and it kind of rewrites your expectation of what is reality. I mean, paradigms are shattered, and people have to come to terms with that fact. So I think there is a stone tape theory. I think that there are portals. I think the universe is so dynamic, and our understanding of it is very infinite or infant ish. Infantile maybe is the better word.
There you go.
Yeah, I don't think one takes away from another or anything. I think these are just different aspects of this incredible reality around us.
Yeah, I do want to pull up Allison's comment, which is sad, but a very good point, which is I think some child spirits stay behind looking for their mom and dad, which makes me really sad to think about. And I think it could be accurate. I mean, man, I was watching like The Last Kingdom, the TV show. I'm not going to spoil it, Rob. Calm the fuck down. Anyways, I was watching The Last Kingdom, and a person's daughter dies, and she's so sad. And
you're really towing the line.
But like it was one line that like just stuck with me. And she's like, I have to kill myself. And like, no, don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. And she's like, I have to because my daughter is alone now. She doesn't understand this. She's by herself. And I was like, damn, that makes me sad as hell.
Yeah.
Well, that goes back
anyways,
to
Butcher dies in the end. He gets tuberculosis.
That goes back to the Lucy Keys story, right? Where Lucy Keys is lost in the wilderness. They never find her body. And although the mother doesn't do that, the actual haunting isn't Lucy Keys. It's the mother looking for the daughter because she's upset that she's out there by herself. And that was a real sad story. And that's one of our first like 7 episodes. If you haven't heard that one, it's a tragic story.
Yeah, there's something different when these ghost stories are like someone who's looking for a lost one. Guys, I didn't spoil the show. Chat's freaking out right now. What did I spoil?
Skip the show. The show's just okay. Go read the books. The books are phenomenal.
All 600 of them.
So good.
Every time I read one of those books, I'm like, it's done now. And then it just wasn't. Uhtred's like 165 years old, still fighting Viking battles. Anyways, that is
the author screwed up. He wrote too much in the first book and then was like, I need more. So he's getting older and older.
He made him too old too fast. He's been an old man. Anyways, we got to move on. This has nothing to do with anything. But there was one other story that I did want to touch on. Not verified in the captain's logs, but it is a story that's been told for a long time. And it is so ridiculous that I didn't include in the episode because I'm like, if I can't verify this one, I'm not going to say it, but they still say that they hear the screams of a ghost in the kitchen. And the backstory with this was some Australian guys that were on the ship got upset that the food wasn't too good. So they took the chef and they stuffed him in an oven.
Oh God.
Yeah. And they burnt him alive.
Oh
yeah.
That's horrible.
That chef must have been the size of Dave to fit in that oven.
Maybe file a complaint with management first or something.
Yeah, there's usually an escalation. It doesn't start with let's
review.
Let's
send an email. She stuffed the guy in an oven. But it's rough.
We don't make the rules. If you don't like the food, that's just what's going to happen from now on.
I'm pretty sure there are rules against that. We don't have to make that rule. That's called murder. But so that's a story that's on the Queen Mary and the kitchen area. So I don't think that kitchen is there anymore. I think it's been replaced by like the concert hall or something like that. But that area where the kitchen was at that time, apparently you can hear the screams of this ghost of this chef or whatever. This boat is so huge. It's so hard to understand the layout of where things used to be, and they've refurbished and rebuilt this thing so many times that it's really hard to get a grasp on where on the ship you are. I mean, I don't even know. Apparently the propellers are not on the front of the ship. You guys taught me today. That's something new. I'm a scientist.
Something's wrong with our ship. It only goes backwards.
Have any of you guys been on this ship?
I have not. It is so we're all from Boston. So
we've seen it, Dave. I don't know if that was when you were out there with us, but we were in Long Beach, so we saw the ship, but we didn't go on it. But no, I have not been on the ship yet.
I'm just curious what the atmosphere in this place feels like, because when you're in a really active place, they say, and I've experienced it myself, that you feel it. You feel like the air's thicker and it's heavier, and there's just a different energy to it. So I'm just curious. It's on my bucket list too, but I haven't been.
And to your point, it might be different room to room, right? Like you might go into certain rooms and feel like there's nothing there, and then you enter another room. When we went to the Oliver house, that one, I mean, there was some stuff going on in that whole house, but there was a particular room that when I walked in, I was like, yep, don't want to be in this room. And I opened my dumb mouth and ended up getting stuck in that room by myself. So,
That's how it happens. Jessica says very heavy in areas. Jessica, have you been on that ship before? Because I'd definitely be interested in hearing.
yeah, she says
so
she
here she goes.
roamed it to kill time when they were leaving for a cruise and just felt heaviness.
Nice. Yeah, I've heard that in a lot of. So I watched all of the videos today that I could find on this, and there's so much of it because so many people have been there, and you can still book this place, as far as I know. They closed down briefly for a little bit during the situation that happened a couple, last year and the year before, but they are reopened now, as far as I know, and you can still book room B340, which is supposed to be the most haunted room. We talked about it briefly already, but people say as soon as they enter that room, they just have a feeling of heaviness. They get dizzy, they get headaches, they get overwhelmed. And I do wonder, from the skeptical side, if they're just getting themselves worked up because they've been waiting to go to this haunted B340 room, and maybe they're just getting in their own heads. But it's hard to deny how much paranormal activity has been recorded there. Jessica says, we spent the night there years ago when I was 7 because my dad was working on the Batman movie close by.
Oh, cool.
I'm more interested in the second story.
Yeah, I need to know more about this at some point, Jessica. You send us an email, please. As the Batman aficionado over here, I need to know about that process. But yeah, this is also on our bucket list. Well, I'm not going to speak for Jesse and Dave, but it is a ship. I've had my fair share of ships. That is a tongue twister lately, but this is one that I would like to go and spend some time on personally.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that it's like a pretty luxurious and nice looking active hotel, that definitely bumps it up on the list for me, where it's like, all right, at least you could do that. But then you have to deal with, are you going on a night where there's a lot of noise contamination when you're already in a place that has a ton of noise contamination anyways?
Yeah.
It's tricky to figure out what would be just the sound of your neighbors in a hotel. I mean, hotel investigations are so difficult anyways. Every noise is somebody else. You're surrounded by people the whole time. So that's tricky as it is. And then when you're on a boat, that's literally on water. So it's moving constantly. There's creaking, there's engine noises, there's banging anyways. It's just a loud place to be in. It's going to be hard. I mean, when we did the USS Salem, obviously that's the most recent one that we've done a few times. It's just the whole thing is just noises everywhere. It's got to be hard to figure out what you're getting and what you're not. So pretty much rule out most, if not all, bangs and knocks, and just try to focus on trying to capture voices or connections with spirit boxes or EMF spikes or whatever. It's tricky.
I think you'd almost want to like set up more than one night, because I think anytime you go into a new space, I've lived in old houses a lot, and I'm telling you, they got a lot of character, and it's nothing paranormal. It's just that they make sounds. There's just odd things, and maybe new houses too, as they're settling or whatever, but only the people that are there for a period of time understand, oh, that's the normal noise. Oh, there's the furnace. Oh, that's that window rattling or something. Like you get to be able to identify those noises, but just going cold. And it's also one of my, I don't know, maybe not a pet peeve, but one of my thoughts regarding a lot of paranormal investigating is going in for a night. Are you familiar enough with the surroundings to be able to, discern what are the natural noises versus what are not? And
yeah, if you have multiple nights, you can rule out, like, if for instance, the mini fridge that's right next to me, it'll click and shut off like every 30 minutes. Just get a click, bzzz. If I didn't know that and I walked into here and all of a sudden I heard that noise, I'd be like, oh man, I just got to click. And God forbid I asked a question like, is there anyone in here with me? And then the fridge just clicks off. I'd be like, oh my God, that could be something. But if you come here a few nights, or if you're, you come over and ask me about it, I'm going to let you know, no, that happens every 30 minutes. That is absolutely nothing paranormal. And it's the same thing if you're on a haunted ship like this and there's like a heating system that clicks on once an hour or something. You're absolutely right. It's just, this is the scientific approach, is doing something over and over and over again. And either you can rule it out, or if it's, or you can rule that it might be something paranormal.
Yeah. And the other thing is the multiple nights thing. Just because a place is overly haunted doesn't mean it's going to be haunted every single night. That's what other people forget about is you're not going to walk into a place and get something every single time. We've been there. We've had that situation happen to us as well. It does, and we're not going to sit there and be like, well, this place isn't haunted. We got nothing, because maybe it takes the house I lived in that was extremely haunted would go a week or two sometimes before anything else ever happened. And there was a ton of stuff that happened in that house, but
That
it
reminds me
doesn't
of-
mean that it happened every night.
Sorry, that reminds me of the first time that we investigated the Hawthorne Hotel. We've done so many failed investigations of the Hawthorne Hotel because we go to Salem and we go out and have a good time and just have too many drinks, then we get back to the hotel and we can't do a proper investigation. Just gonna be honest with you. The first time we did it, we actually made like a spoof video about this. Unfortunately, I don't think we have the footage anywhere, but I would love to at least drop it on Patreon. But we had this oh man, I don't know how much of the story I want to tell, but I actually completely lost my train of thought because I was thinking about this. What the hell were we just talking about?
Are you talking about the Ouija board we made?
No. I forget the whole story. I'll go back and listen to the podcast.
Wow, riveting stuff. Thanks for
Completely lost
that
my train of thought.
entire
Yep.
segue.
The hell were we talking about a second
You
ago?
absolutely know it. You're so used to spoiling things, and then you can't even tell a goddamn story that you want to tell.
Do you know
What are we
do you know what
doing
my problem
here?
is? Do you know what my problem is? Is I keep looking over at chat, and they've been talking about Batman for the last 15 minutes. Literally still are. Ben Affleck was the best Batman. All right.
Oof.
Moving on. Sorry, I apologize.
I'm
I
not
really lost that story.
Clipping
Clipping this.
What is happening on? What is
Clipping-
going on?
Clipping this whole section out of the podcast, just so you know. But I will find out what that story is and text it to you guys. Anyways, moving on. So we talked about. I do want to go a little bit more into B340 because there's been so much here. So I mentioned the Sam and Colby episode. It was an episode that, I mean, these guys, they're huge on YouTube. I don't know if you've ever watched Sam and Colby. Younger kids, they go out and they investigate places. They investigate in sort of an amateur style, and that's coming from an amateur. I'm like, wow, these guys are like us. Like, we're just kind of like winging it. They got nothing on their first visit, like almost the entire time. And they were there, and they basically were like, let's just wrap it up, to a point where they cut the cameras and everything. But then they started, the faucet turned on in the bathroom, and they all started freaking out or whatever. And one of them had the mind to at least roll a voice recorder. So they actually released the entire unedited footage, which I respect, on a separate video. And they released this entire EVP session of them having a conversation with what they later thought might have been a demon. Now, that wasn't like voices going back and forth, but it was responding intelligently with knocks. It's really interesting. So if you got 40 something minutes to kill, go check out that. They have the unedited version. So wear headphones and turn it up and listen to what they're getting. Because the knocks, if it wasn't someone faking it in the room, I mean, they shut off all the lights. So if it wasn't one of these guys being an asshole and just thumping on the floor to respond to the questions, it was like serious evidence of actual communication with something in the room. And the questions that they asked were good. It was really interesting. So that was one of the things that I went through and listened to the whole thing. And I was like, if this is legit, it's actually pretty cool.
I saw that on multiple investigations too, where there were knockbacks, like almost in a pattern-like thing. So again, something that could, be kind of done if they wanted to do it, but if it was correct, then good evidence.
Exactly. And if this is true, it couldn't have just been one guy messing with them in the room, according to all the witnesses. Again, they're all on the same YouTube channel, so who knows? But taking them at their word, they're saying that the knocks were coming from different places in the room. So it couldn't have been just one guy thumping his foot on the floor. They were saying it was coming from the ceiling, then it would come from the wall, then it would come from the bathroom. And whenever it was a one knock, which was a yes, it would like slam on the floor, to a point where they said that the room was almost like shaking. It was so vivid. So kind of cool. You could check it out. If you believe it, you believe it. If you don't, you don't. But they come off as relatively authentic when they actually get something, because a lot of their videos, there's just nothing going on for most of the episodes. So,
but that's legit. I mean, the paranormal is a phrase that I came up with, and I think it's pretty accurate. But I think it's like to document the paranormal is like trying to catch a lightning in a bottle. I mean, I lived in a house that was very active, but only sometimes of the year. It was certain seasons I had things really popping off, and otherwise it would just be one or event a week or something. It was just really subdued. And so, yeah, you don't know when that stuff's going to happen. It just happens in its own time when it wants to, I guess.
Yeah, you're right about that. It's you can't expect it to. People expect to walk into a haunted location, especially places like the Conjuring House or probably the Queen Mary, and expect things just to be going crazy right away.
Right.
Oh, this was the story. Now I'm going to cut out all 40 minutes of me forgetting the story. But the first time we were at the Hawthorne, and now I built it up way too much. First time we were at the Hawthorne, we were shooting footage and we're like, oh, we got to go up to the haunted room. We had requested like the haunted room. It was like room like 312 or something like that. I don't remember the actual number, but when we finally we're like, well, let's at least make a trip up there. We're all just trashed in the middle of the night. And so we get on the elevator, we go up there, but someone's staying in the room. There's a do not disturb thing on the door. So we just go outside the room and just wave an EMF detector in front of it. And we're like, nah, not haunted. Okay, let's go. And that was the extent of it. But this is what, like, yeah, this is like the mind frame that people are at. It's like if they don't go in and something doesn't happen right away, they're like, oh, this is bullshit. It's not haunted. It's like, well, maybe you came in at a bad time.
Yeah, I think that
maybe a bad day.
The current influx of paranormal shows have maybe given people that expectation, because you turn it on, you sit for an hour and you've seen 15, 20, 30 things go on, and you don't know the work that went into that, or how long it took to get any of that stuff, or even if it's legitimate. Sometimes you have to, of course, question that. But yeah, I think that we have this reality TV kind of mindset, I think, a lot of times, and we're used to turning on, the show, and then the stuff happens, and then we turn it off, and it was this entertaining moments. But a friend of mine has a paranormal group, and he named it Red Eyes and Dead Batteries, because I think that's most of it, is you're just sitting there and you're draining batteries.
That's really it. And it's not the phenomenon of electronics malfunctioning and draining is insanely true. And that might be the most consistent thing that happens in all of our investigations, to a point where it's like, if we're editing an episode or coming up with something, it's like, I almost feel like we're being cheap by even mentioning it, but it happens all the time. Like fully charged batteries that from a video camera that I could sit here and mount up here to record a video on, and it's going to work for a full hour of me blabbering into the camera. No problem. But the second I take it to a haunted location, the thing's dead in 2 minutes. It's like, it just doesn't add up. And fresh AA batteries, everything, like these things get drained all the time in haunted locations. So it sucks to be repetitive, because you feel like you're, being cheap here, but it's a real thing that happens.
Well, that's how scientists prove things. It's how scientists prove,
right?
Is through repetition. If you get the same thing repeating over and over, the same results over and over, that's your scientific evidence, or evidence for something being legitimate.
The one that cooks my bacon is when people are doing their cameras and like, oh my God, my camera is going dead. It's only got 1 bar, and then it goes dead, and they leave the room and they power it back on and it's full. So something weird was happening, I don't know, in the EM frequency or whatever, that was disrupting that battery's ability to do what batteries do, I guess. But when they left the room or left that location, they were at full battery again.
Yeah, that happened with us at Emily's Bridge. We mentioned this at nauseum on this show, but we had the GoPro, and I'm sitting in the truck, which, by the way, okay, so we're in Vermont. It's winter. It's absolutely freezing outside, but I'm in the warm truck. The camera never left the warm truck. So if you take it into the freezing cold, maybe things are going to start messing up, some equipment anyways. But I have the camera and it just refuses to turn on. So we were unable to get this is a night vision GoPro. So we were unable to get any night vision footage on this bridge, because this thing just wouldn't turn on when we got to that bridge. And I'm like, whatever. Okay, let's just roll on cell phone footage and use some UV lights or whatever. And we got what we need to get on that bridge, but it just didn't work. The second we get back to the hotel, thing fires right up, no problem. And it's like, well, what was the issue? Because it wasn't a temperature change. It wasn't a battery issue. This thing just, once we got there, it refused to work. I didn't have an answer for it.
Yeah. That really cooks your bacon, doesn't it?
My bacon is officially cooked at this moment. So, anything else you guys want to touch on the Queen Mary?
No, I think we kind of hit the majority of the stuff I want to hit on. The
that we want to hit on, yes. The majority of hauntings, no. There's so many. So many.
Well, you would never be able to get it all in one
No.
episode, right? It would. So I think the only way to do the Queen Mary, and I say this about everything, is we'd actually have to do an investigation episode at the Queen Mary. I'm not saying that is or isn't going to happen, but to do a part 2 of the Queen Mary would have to be an investigation episode.
Or I
Maybe
can
it should
tell you
be-
how the engine works.
Oh my god.
No, I think I'd rather investigate. But I'm telling you what, maybe it'd be a good Paranormal Portal, small town ghost stories crossover episode. Boom.
Oh, we could
There's
probably
no
make that,
That could be it.
happen.
So tell so a few people in chat know you and know about your show. Tell us about your show.
All right, so my show is called The Paranormal Portal, as you can see. But I've been doing it since about 2016, and it is a podcast, but it's also a YouTube channel, and those are actually two different shows. The way I do it, I do my YouTube show more like a variety show covering lots of different topics, news stories, articles, talking about phenomena, and just having a light, good time with it. But the podcast, which is available on all the major platforms, is dealing mostly with either people in the field that are researching, talking about what they're doing and what they've seen, and some celebrities. But a lot of times it's just everyday people that have had experiences that reach out to me and come on and tell their stories. So it's a lot of fun. It's really, it took me a long time in my life to figure out what I wanted to do, but now I know. I'm like in the fourth quarter here. It's like, oh, I know what I want to do finally.
It's actually a really good show. You're a great host and interviewer, and really drive the discussion well with a lot of your guests. So if you're looking for more paranormal stuff that really like dives into multiple avenues of the paranormal, it's a great show to check out.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Yep.
But I just love doing it. And it's incredible. The funny thing is before, when I finally dialed it in that, hey, I want to do a show, I was like, yeah, I can do this. I know about this stuff. And I was all cocky about it and stuff. And then I started doing it. And once you start digging and listening to people and hearing their experiences and all of the different material out there, you're like, I don't know anything. I'm an idiot. I mean, I've learned so
Welcome to the
much
club.
doing the show.
Yes. Thank you for joining our band of idiots today. Because
We're kindred spirits, but yeah, I mean, it's just been this ongoing education. But the reason that I was really gung ho about starting is because I've had a ton of different experiences myself, and it's just been like a quest, because I really would like to be able to understand at least something of what is going on here, because I really do think this stuff is important. Like, a lot of people dismiss this stuff and go, well, that's just a glitch in the matrix kind of thing. It's like, well, that's where reality went sideways, and it's discarded, and I suppose maybe that's because people really want to protect their paradigm. That's people's security. But I think this stuff is really, and I mentioned it earlier, but I think it's the breadcrumbs. I think it's teaching us that this reality we're in is very fluid, very dynamic, and there's so much more to discover and learn. So,
Yeah, and I think there are people that are more open to that stuff than others. And as we've done the show and gone to locations, I think I've learned that I'm a little more open to it than I thought I was.
Same.
So it's a whole interesting dynamic with that too.
well, when you guys come on my show, we're going to talk about your experiences.
Absolutely.
Our audience has heard enough of that shit. So, like, oh god, this fucking story again. I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm gonna say this. We went to Emily's Bridge once. GoPro stopped working. Yeah. It's fun though, and it's cool that you touch on people's stories that people haven't heard about. When we originally started the show, that was gonna be the whole show. And then we were like, well, how do we reach out to all these people if we don't have an audience yet? So then we started covering big topics, and then we're like, this is awesome. And so, and we built a crowd, and now we do a little bit of a mix of both. Actually, Dave, do you have a ghost story? Because we had one that we wanted to read out, but we forgot to do that. So we'll do that real quick as well. Brent, you're welcome to stick around and analyze this never before heard ghost story before from a listener.
Yes. So this one was sent in via email from... My dog wants to have a nightmare now on the couch next to me. As I mentioned. Sent in by Trevor McGuire. So this took place in autumn 2019 in Blackwood, New Jersey. Trevor says, my wife Caitlin and I, along with 2 friends of ours, decided to go into Philadelphia to experience the terror behind the walls at Eastern State Penitentiary. After a night of fun, we returned to her house while our friends made their way home. As I sat in the upstairs guest bedroom working on a video I had made of our night at Eastern State, the light in the room flickered and went out. I thought the light shorted out, so I flicked the switch on and off, and the light came back on. I knew something was up. A few minutes later, I had finished making the edits on the video and went to bed. Just a few minutes after I laid down, I heard heavy footsteps coming up the stairs. I thought it was Caitlin coming up to check on me or use the bathroom. I didn't think much of it and fell asleep. The following morning, I told her about the light. She didn't know what to make of that. I then asked her, was that you coming up to check on me last night? She replied, no, I was fast asleep in the den. The revelation sent chills up my spine. I couldn't believe what had happened to me. I've experienced other things before, but disembodied footsteps and flickering light just adds to my growing list of experiences. According to Caitlin, when her father was alive, he would come home from work every night around 11, kick off his boots at the foot of the stairs, and bound up the steps to take a shower. That would explain the heavy footsteps, which I now experienced. As for the flickering light, I told her, was a first for her. Maybe it was her father telling me, hey, lights off, go to bed. I think it's best when that happens just to do as you're told, even if it's orders from beyond the grave. Another night, we were eating dinner and sitting on the couch watching a Harry Potter movie. Suddenly, we both heard the heavy footsteps. We looked at the clock, and she says, this is the earliest I've ever heard them. This was another first for both of us. I decided quickly to pull a trick out of Ghost Hunters and said, Mr. Zielman, just to put me at ease, may I ask for you to knock 3 times? I knocked 3 times on the coffee table. A moment later or so, both of us heard 3 faint knocks from the entrance hall. Both of us were taken aback at this interaction. This was just another first for me. Caitlin smiled and chuckled as she knew it was just her father checking in on us, a kindred spirit of my father-in-law greeting me as if he were alive just a decade ago.
That's wild.
Yeah,
I actually
it's-
haven't really
it's-
heard one of like that before.
Well, the juxtaposition is funny, right? Because he's actually terrified, and his wife is just like, "Well, that's just that," right? So the
I will say
which
this as a little piece of advice, though: if you're going to ask him to knock any number but 3,
I know, I was
You know,
thinking the same thing. I was like, bold move going with the 3
we've
knocks.
seen enough of this. I do want to touch on Chris's comment. Chris from Haunted American History chimes in. He says, "I'm visiting a haunted local spot tomorrow. Nice
Ooh.
knowing you all. Damn, we want to know more about that, but it's probably for your show.
Well,
So
what we
keep
know
that
about
as-
Chris is
keep
that
it
he
a
doesn't
secret.
usually visit the haunted locations because he's scared of them.
Yes, he's
Yes.
been on the show before, and he mentioned that. So, chat seems to love that story. That's a cool one. We've had a few of them that are like good, kind ghost stories, or at least that's what they seem like on the surface. So
Hmm.
that is that's pretty cool. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Let's thank our patrons real quick. For our VIPs, we have Allison V, Garrett, Jeannie R, Justin T again, Lisa J, Mallory K, Mike Oubliette, Blake, Mom and Pops W, Robert H, Stephen V, Demon King, and Irish Assassin Gaming. Thank you to the VIPs. We also have Ambi Rose, Anna C, Donnie N, Lily, IDJF Batch, Jake V, Janice G, Matthew T, Papa Squatch, Rachel B, Sarah Cook. We have Stephanie A, Sydney B, Al Capone, Anthony T, Ashley M, Brandon W, Brennan B, Catherine McSlugs, Cody G, Eric J S, Huggy Bear, Joe R, Kimberly J, Mark M, Mariah M, Paul from St. Louis, Sarah R, Scotty L, Solar Flare, Soph, and Hooper. I need to let my dog outside. She's freaking out. I'll be right back.
yes. So
There's one
Brent-
thing about this ghost story that was sent in that I wanted to comment on and I forgot. But Trevor,
Mhm.
as you were editing that video for Eastern State Penitentiary, if it came out any good, you'll have to shoot us an email and see if you want to engage in an unpaid internship and edit some videos for us.
please, we're begging you. That's gonna kind of do it for me. Do we have Brent? Do you have any closing thoughts?
Well, I just want to thank you guys for letting me be here and being a part of the discussion. I've loved getting to know you guys and to have this opportunity to be on your show. Yeah, I mean, I would love for you guys to return the favor and come on the portal sometime if you're game.
Oh, we're in.
Absolutely,
We are in.
Perfect.
So that's Brent Thomas from the Paranormal Portal. You can follow his page, subscribe to him on YouTube, check out his videos, podcast. I'm assuming it's available everywhere.
Yeah, everywhere, all the major platforms. And
Cool.
I have a homepage, it's paranormalportal.net, and it kind of is the launching point from all the different things, social media, YouTube, and the podcast. So
Awesome. Well, the YouTube link is already in the show notes, so go check that out, and then I'll pop his website in there as well. You go check him out. Anything else, gentlemen? Next week, where are we going?
We're going to Alabama next week.
Bama.
Yeah, we haven't done Alabama yet. And there is a story from Alabama that I find terrifying. So we're going to probably be covering that next Tuesday, unless I pivot and decide to do something else, which has been known to happen in the past.
Sometimes it happens.
You
Hey,
are
I
very
finally settled on my location this morning. So, we
Yeah.
knocked it out. And Friday, we're going to go, hopefully, if all things work out, we're going to go see the new Evil Dead movie. We'll drop a review on that probably the same night. That's what we're going to aim for. So if you also want to go see the Evil Dead movie, then listen to the review. Cool. If not, go check it out. It should be a good one. It looks exciting. I'm excited about Evil Dead. You're excited about Evil Dead?
96% on Rotten Tomatoes right now.
oh yeah, I mean, the Evil Dead movies are creepy. I'm not a big zombie guy, but man, those are hair raisers. So yeah, I'd love to check it out.
Yes,
Should be fun.
one of my favorite franchises of all time. But yeah, that's going to kind of do it for us. Buy some merch, people, by the way. We have hats, we have shirts, and you should buy some of the merch.
Yes.
Give us a 5-star review.
I will say this, Brent. You've earned the approval from our father. Brodad Wilkins says
Aw.
Pops approves of Brent. Nice guy. Look at that.
Oh, thank you. I
Perfect.
appreciate it.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Well, we thank you guys all for hanging out. We will be back on Friday for a movie review, and then Tuesday we'll go to Bama, probably.
Yeah.
Anyways, drop a sub on the YouTube. Join Discord. Do it. And thank you to all our patrons. We'll see you guys next time.
Peace.
What's going on, everybody? Thank you for making it through another episode of Hometown Ghost Stories. If you liked that video, hit like. If you loved that video, hit subscribe. And if you hated that video, well, then why are you still here? Either way, join us on all of our live shows every Tuesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That much is guaranteed. But sometimes we do surprise shows. We don't tell anyone. We'll just show up with a live show one day, and you won't know about it unless you have that notification bell turned on. So if you don't, turn on that notification so that you don't miss any of our impromptu live shows. Catch us on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, comment live, watch your comments pop up on the screen, interact with us, make fun of us, whatever. And if you want to support the show, leave us a 5-star review on iTunes and we'll read it out loud live on the show. Also, for as little as $3 a month, you can subscribe to us on Patreon and join the legendary cast of patrons with your name in the credits. Plus, you'll gain access to all the extra bonus Patreon exclusive content that we have on that platform. Either way, we'll be here next Tuesday with a brand new episode. We'll see you then.